Today I'm going to show you how to replace the driver's side CV axle on this 2008 GMC Sierra. Now this is the driver's side, but the passenger side is pretty much the exact same procedure, just reversed. It should be the same procedure for any GMT-900 platform truck, Chevy Silverado, Chevy Tahoe, Chevy Suburban, GMC Yukon, and all that, even some Cadillac trucks. Get the wheel off, and then you have to remove this cap. It looks like somebody already got to this one before me. Should make it much easier. Remove the CV axle nut with 36mm socket. Washer out too. Now remove those 6 15mm bolts that hold the CV axle to the front differential. Usually get an impact wrench in there, and when you get that bolt out, you just rotate the assembly to the next one. Now get the axle separated from the differential. Let's pry it out. Loosen these plastic clips that hold the ABS line on. Just pry this because this assembly is going to swing down. You don't want it to be ripping on this wire. Now remove this brake line support bracket. It's a 10mm. And I just put the bolt back in here so it doesn't get lost. Now remove the upper ball joint nut, 18mm box end wrench. There's no room for a ratchet. Now thread the nut back on a couple of turns. And rotate the steering wheel so that it's pointing all the way to the left. Get that ABS line far out of the way. And then smack this spindle with a large hammer right here. Take a pry bar, bear down on the upper control arm, and then remove the nut the rest of the way. Just wiggle this thing out of there. There you go. Make sure the back side of the CV axle is clear of the differential. And take your hammer and a punch, and then just drive the CV axle out of the hub. Let's pick it up. It's helpful to remove this protective cover if you have it, but sometimes you can just pry it below that. Wiggle and shake, pull it out of there. Now you just kind of gotta guide the axle out of here. Just kind of send the axle out this way. There you go. New CV axle. Should come with a new nut. Never reuse the old CV axle nuts. So you notice these are pinch nuts. They're designed to lock onto the threads. Get rid of the new nut and washer. And this blind protective mesh. And then guide the new axle in the same direction the old one came out. Go in through the back of the control arm, up around the sway bar, and drop it in like this. Guide it towards the hub. Hopefully yours will be less greasy. Guide it onto the flange of the differential. Line it up and start 2 of the bolts. That side's on. Spin it, put a bolt on the opposite side. Just kind of hold it flat. Keep these finger tight for now. Get the CV axle, make sure those splines line up, and then push the hub back towards the upper ball joint. You gotta sort of lift the upper control arm up a little. Get the ball joint stud. Get it in there and take a pry bar and bear down on the upper control arm with the ball joint nut in the other hand. So you get a couple of threads exposed in the bottom, start the nut. And you can find a really good place to really apply some pressure on the control arm. And spin the nut on, a couple more threads. At that point, it should be on enough to pull the ball joint taper into the spindle. So start that, start tightening it down with the 18mm. If it spins and the entire ball stud spins, pry down on it and it'll sort of put pressure on the stud and keep it from turning. You're gonna have to adjust the pressure as it gets lower too. Once you've got a little bit of the bottom of the ball joint stud exposed, you can take a pair of vice grips or something and grab onto it, hold it, and that'll keep the ball stud from rotating any further while you torque the nut down. There we go. Once everything bottoms out, just take a large wrench and crank it down. And make sure I crank these down to at least 80 foot-pounds to make sure the taper is seated. I know you can't get a torque wrench on it, you can get a crow's foot wrench. And here's an old mechanic's trick. If you need more leverage on your box end wrench, you can take another wrench and all wrenches lock together like this. And that gives you almost the size of a breaker bar. Take it and lock it in like this. And you can lay some real torque. That's about as tight as you want that. Once the taper is seated, the ball joint will stay in there. Back the nut off. Back the nut off about 4 threads, and then clean off all the grease and lubricant with brake cleaner. Let the brake cleaner dry thoroughly. Take some blue Loctite. Get it on the ball joint threads. And then run it down. And then it's final torque. Go. That's it. Ball joints on. Now straighten the wheel. Reinstall this brake line support bracket. $10mm. Now reinstall all these ABS cable clips. Now get the rest of the inboard flange bolts started. There's start one, rotate the hub, start the next one, etc. Run them all down with your fingers. Take a 15mm socket and just snug them down. Don't torque them down yet. Now take your torque wrench and a suitably long extension. You can reach those. And then it kind of supports on the sway bar. Now you can take a 1/4" extension or something and insert it into one of the cooling fins of the rotor, and that stops it from turning. And don't worry about breaking anything, you're only torquing these down to 60 foot-pounds. You could alternatively just have somebody stand on the brakes, but and once that one's torqued, rotate the assembly to where the bolt that's directly across from it, the furthest bolt away, is the next one to get torqued, and then you kind of just continue on in that star sequence. 1, 2, 3. This bolt. And once those two bolts that are directly across from each other are torqued down, then it's pretty much flat. Just proceed to the next one. And then get the one that's directly across from that one. Go to the upper one. Get the one across from that one. Next one. Now it's tight. And then just go around the wheel in a circle and make sure everything's still tight. This also guarantees you didn't miss any. There you go. The in-bolt flange is torqued. I'll take the new washer and the new nut. You can drive it on with an impact wrench, but use the impact wrench's lowest setting because this has to be torqued precisely. So we're going to set this to 1 just to drive it all the way down. Jam up the rotor and then torque that axle nut down to 177 foot-pounds. Make sure you check the torque spec on your truck because it may be different. This is a 2008 GMC Sierra. Go. Tap this seal cap back on with a rubber hammer. Clean off all the greasy handprints in the rotor, brake cleaner. Go through and double check everything. If everything checks out, put the wheel back on and you're done. Now this is the driver's side, but the passenger side is pretty much the exact same procedure, just reversed, mirror image. So this same video does apply for the passenger side. If this video helped you, please consider supporting the channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. Thanks for watching.